Our eyes are really important to us, and we rely on them very heavily. And what we find is even individuals who have severe vision loss will try to rely on vision even though it's not available to them anymore. That we're visually dependent individuals. So for example, if I'm going to stand here in front of you and I'm on a nice firm surface, so what I teach clients to do is to put their focus into what's called their somatosensory system. So we do a lot of eyes closed activity where I ask them to feel the surface underneath the feet and tell me where the pressures are underneath your feet. So what I reacquaint them with is another sensory system that becomes very important to them when their eyes are not available. The same would be true if you're reading. When you're reading, your vision is engaged, so you can't use vision for balance. So you have to rely on your other systems to help you with that. So I make my clients walk across the room reading poems, and that forces them to take their attention down into another sensory system to get the information they need. When you go to the bathroom at night and you don't have lighting available because you haven't put your night lights in your corridor yet, right? Another one of those preventive things that we need to do. Put those night lights there. Good job. That what we tend to do and immediately is we put our arms out. So we're using that system to actively explore the environment to feel where things are. Now it's interesting that we use our hands and we don't rely so much on our feet because our feet are in contact with the surface we're walking along. I'm a big believer in if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's not just related to muscle, it's related to every system in our system. We don't have the same quality of awareness in space as we do when we're younger. So there's that tendency when you're stepping up onto the curb that you get that front foot up, but you're not as acutely aware of where that back foot is. And that back foot, by golly, hits that curb. And unless you have a significant amount of muscle strength and other factors, you're going to go down. So there's a change in proprioception. There's a change in how well we feel the surface underneath us. These are natural occurring age-associated changes, but to a greater or lesser degree, depending on the person. It's not an all. We also know that the hair cells, or those little receptors in the vestibular system, decline. So we lose them as we get older, a percentage of them, usually by the 8th decade. And we also know that muscle strength declines a given percentage. That's age-associated. But we can change that trajectory by what we do. The senior fitness test was born at Cal State Fullerton. It's our bread and butter test for looking at the multiple dimensions of fitness in older adults. And we like to pride ourselves in the fact that our clients that come regularly into our center don't follow the natural trajectory of decline in any of the dimensions of fitness, because what they're doing is they're actively maintaining all of the dimensions of fitness. So their trajectory looks significantly different. And we know from the work that Rickley and Jones did with the senior fitness test that individuals who are physically active are on average 15 years younger than their chronological peers. So we know there's much that you can do, but you have to do it. It's oftentimes, what happens when people prematurely start to use assistive devices. Some may absolutely need to use assistive devices, but I've gone into a lot of senior living communities where people are using them because it's so convenient to put things in the basket. They don't have to tote it around anymore. And they're really cool now, right? Because they're red or they're blue. They're just really jazzy. But what that's doing is it's taking away, you're not really working the balance system now. So one of the tenets of balance training is that you need to be doing activity in minimally supportive environments. So if you're holding on and your knuckles are white when you're standing on one leg or you're doing a tandem stance, you're not really working your balance system, but you're probably really improving your grip strength, because you're holding on for dear life with that ballet bar. So one of the tenets that I teach I train a lot of instructors to become balance or mobility specialists, is if you see a client that has white knuckles, then you're clearly doing an activity that's too challenging for them. So you need to step it back so that the client can do the activity without needing to hold on, or at the very least, put a bit of a finger on there, because we know we can get a lot of information just by putting a finger on a support structure. So, a lot of times we think we're doing really good things. So if I'm doing a one-legged stance, and the belly bar's over there, but if I'm here and I'm in this, am I really working my balance system? I'm really working my grip strength over here and my isometric strength in my stance arm, but I'm not really doing anything for my system. So one of the things we do is we do foot drawing. All right, have you ever done foot drawing?
No. What's that?
So one of the ways in which I teach people to get into a one-legged stance is to draw with their foot. So if I don't shift my weight over the leg that I'm going to stand on, do you think I'll be able to draw? Right, so the sneaky trick here is they've got to shift their weight onto their stance leg so that they can move this foot and make boxes or triangles or spell their name. And I'm already getting them into a one-legged stance. I'm not saying stand on one leg, because if I say that, I'm not really teaching you how to get there. But if I tell you to shift your weight onto your stance leg, and now I want you to move this foot around, you're already 2/3 of the way to doing a one-legged stance. You don't really even need a lot of strength to do a one-legged stance. But if my belly button's not in the right place and I'm doing this, I'm never going to get into a one-legged stance because I'm in the wrong place to do it. So a lot of what I believe very strongly in is teaching. Teaching strategies, teaching how to move the body differently. So my program is quite different to most other programs out there because it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of balance and looking at the systems and which systems are contributing to the balance dysfunction. I'll often do a technique with my clients where I'll ask them to stand at one end of the room and I'll tell them to keep their chin parallel to the floor and tell me how far they can see without tilting their head. And they'll say, oh, pretty much to the end of the room. So my next question will be, then why do you have your head tilted down looking at the floor? If you can see that far. So one of my cues is look with your eyes, not with your head. Because as soon as you tilt your head down, guess what system you activate? Your vestibular system. And so it starts telling you that you're tilting your head down. So one of the goals that we have when we're walking is we want to keep a nice stable visual platform. And if you start to activate your vestibular system, you also do things with your visual system. So one of the things I teach when I'm teaching my older adults to walk is to look with their eyes. So I can see where I'm going. I'm looking at that vertical target and suddenly I'm walking in a very straight line. But if I'm not really focused on a vertical target in the distance, I'm really open to a lot of very reactive responses. Because instead of planning ahead, so here's another little example. When you step up onto a curb, there's two ways that I'll watch a client step up onto a box or a bench. I'll see if they move smoothly towards the bench and don't pause as they step onto and off the bench, versus a person that walks up to the bench, stops, takes a look at the bench, and then gets up over the bench. That's an indication that they're not planning ahead. And so what happens then is everything is reactive. So everything happens very quickly instead of you being able to plan ahead.
What about uneven sidewalk or cracks in the sidewalk? How are we going to see those if we're focusing on something ahead?
Your head is forward. Your head is forward, but your eyes are looking ahead of you. So looking with the eye as opposed to tilting the head down. So instead of looking here, you're looking there. So you're already planning ahead.
Dr. Rose, can you tell us why people start shuffling instead of using the heel-to-toe walking?
So, the shuffling oftentimes, from my perspective, is just an over-the-time dramatic change in the movement pattern. And part of that could be related to loss of flexibility in the ankles, definitely plantar flexor, dorsiflexor strength, so the strength around your ankle muscles. If you're weak in the ankle muscles, the last thing you're going to be doing is a heel-toe push-off. If you're starting to experience instability, we're very clever at adapting our behaviors. The trouble is the brain doesn't always get it right. So we change, we start to get a wide base of support, we get more flat-footed. We're losing that lower body strength, so we want to be in double support. That means both feet on the ground. So that naturally begins as a short stride length. So we want to get that foot back on the ground really quickly. We don't have the strength to do a strong heel strike and a good strong toe off because we don't have the plantar flexor dorsiflexor strength. So we adapt. So we start taking short strides, wide base of support, boom, suddenly you're shuffling. But it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it's not something that happens overnight, and the key is to nip it in the bud, is to, identify the changes really early and be aggressive in reversing those.